think one thing that we prioritize as a couple, the perspective of curiosity really helps us to see that this person is so different from me, but it prevents you from attacking the differences, but rather it gives you that lens of appreciation.
Hello and welcome to the Connect to Marriage podcast. I am June and I'm your host for this episode. In each episode of the Connect to podcast, we'll be tackling questions that couples ask about marriage, communication, conflict, and so much more. We hope you'll keep tuning in to learn with us as you grow closer, deeper, and stronger in your marriage. Friendship is the foundation of every healthy, thriving marriage. In today's world, couples can be together but live very disconnected lives. In this episode, we'll explore what friendship in marriage can look like and how couples can nurture this precious friendship for a lifetime. I'm really excited to have with us today Douglas and Andrea, our guest couple for this episode. Welcome, Douglas and Andrea.
Hi, June.
Hi, June. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks so much for being here. Now, shall we begin by having you share a little bit about yourselves?
Okay, I'm Andrea. I am 26 this year. Douglas and I have been married for 6+ months since May last year.
My name is Douglas. I am 25 years old. So as you can tell, still in our mid-20s. Happily married for 6 months, and we have been friends since
August 2021.
Yes, since so about 3 years plus of friendship. Yes, so that's a bit about us.
Right. So I would imagine 3 years plus of friendship that includes dating as well. Thereafter, exploring and moving into marriage, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you guys are really well placed to speak more into this topic of friendship and connection. Maybe we can start off with understanding what is the importance. Why do you really need to work on this piece for marriage?
Yeah, I think for us, friendship has always been important, and it's the most foundational part of any marriage or even any intimate relationship. So I think my friend, just referencing a friend's book, his name is Leo. He almost likens the different tiers of intimacy and relationship at different tiers, like a pyramid, with the bottom being the strongest and the most stable tier of the pyramid. And that pyramid is actually the friendship level. And then, of course, it builds up thinner and thinner, smaller and smaller into the different other aspects of the relationship, like companionship, commitment, and then I think ultimately for marriage, it would be the sexual aspect of the relationship. He was saying that if the pyramid is inverted, it would be very unstable. But with friendship at the bottom, that provides the most stable layer of any relationship and marriage as well.
Oh, I love that. That's so insightful. Douglas,
Yes.
any thoughts about this?
I feel that for a marriage that is built on a friendship, it really adds to the life and the meaning to a marriage. For a marriage where two people are good friends, it really helps them to bond over more than just logistics, which is what we really want out of a marriage, right? Not just being co-partners, whether it's in raising a family or in sustaining a home, but we really want to bond over more than just the day-to-day administrative aspects. So for us, I feel like friendship is really that secret sauce. It's like when you go to school, you're not there to just study, right? But you're there to also make friends, and it really adds to your experience in schooling. Likewise, in marriage, you're not just raising a family, but you are doing it with your best friend. Yeah, so that's our belief as a couple. Friendship really adds so much fun, adds so much laughter, and also someone that can really go through the difficult times with. Yeah, so I'm glad I married my best friend. Yes.
Okay, you guys are so sweet. Our listeners can't see that, but they just exchange a little friendly hug with their hands, yes. And, I really like what you said, Douglas, about how friendship is really the secret sauce. As busy as we are, maybe raising children, maybe balancing work and family responsibilities, right? The stresses of life can be so real.
Yes.
So I can imagine that if you have a strong friendship at home where, you can just pour your heart and soul out to this person whom you have married and you still call your best friend, that can be such a wonderful source of support.
Yes.
Right? For us as individuals and for our families as a whole. I'm just wondering if you have any tips on how you practically do this as a couple, continue sowing into your friendship in spite of all the challenges, all the external pressures that you might face.
I think definitely living in Singapore, that time is our most limited and finite resource. Yeah, and I think more than time, it's even our attention. Sometimes you can be spending time with your spouse, like for me, but I know that I am actually being distracted, whether it's by work commitments, certain worries on my head. I feel like how we practically do this as a couple is we try to keep to a rhythm as far as we can. The number one tip I can give to listeners is really spend at least 20 minutes a day, just sharing from your heart. More than just sharing about your schedules for the next day or the groceries that you need to buy. Really spend about just 20 minutes. For us, we do it just before we sleep, sharing about our day, how we felt, something funny that happened. It can be really simple, low barrier entry events that happen, but that really helps us to connect before we sleep, and to also start a day afresh. How about you, dear?
So that has been something that really works for us, connecting before bedtime. And Douglas actually purchased a really good resource from Connection Codes. It's this thing called the feelings wheel. So I think it's quite common in schools. We use it like, anger, then there's the emoji of anger or joy. So there are different words, and every day we just kind of pick one of these main emojis or words that describe how we feel about the day. And I think that kind of just kickstarts us on like, why are we feeling a particular emotion that day? And that just helps us to share like any major events or even smaller events that happen through the day. So we do that. And then I think for us as Christians, we pray after that as well.
Just to add a bit of context to what this Connection Codes is, it was actually a resource that was developed by a clinical psychologist in the US, where in his field of study and through having many therapy sessions with couples who are struggling in their marriage, he realized that the main ingredient that leads to a connection is actually the sharing of emotion beyond just the sharing of logistics, which I feel that as a couple in Singapore, it's easy to fall into, where we just exist as a married couple that simply shares logistics, right? Shares our plans for the day, our schedules. When you are able to learn this skill of sharing your emotions in a way that it's non-judgmental, for example, the emotion of like anger, right? I'm feeling angry, and your spouse is able to acknowledge that emotion in a way that validates how you feel, right? It actually creates a deeper bond. So this was just a very practical resource which we used to also teach ourselves the language of connection. This is not sponsored, but we really benefited from this resource, especially because we came from families that didn't really model very healthy communication of emotions. A lot of times in our families, emotion was expressed through outbursts, such as an outburst of anger, of panic, but we didn't really know how to say, I am feeling angry or I am feeling anxious, which is what this tool helped us to learn the skill of.
The early years of marriage are filled with unique challenges and opportunities for growth. What happens after saying, I do? At the Connect to Just Married workshop, you will gain practical tools to work through differences and conflicts and learn ways to keep the romance alive. If you have been married for 5 years or less, this workshop is for you. Get more information at www.family.org.sg/C2JustMarried.
I'm really loving the tips that you both shared. I'm hearing that you really try to practice going beyond just functional speak where you need to settle logistics,
Yes.
the schedule for the week, or the admin, or the live min, right? And really going deeper into sharing what has not just happened through the day, but actually what is happening internally, which the emotions wheel then helps you to really focus and bring out. So I'm really loving that. And let's just say that I'm going to look for this emotions wheel like straight after this podcast. I'm sure many of our listeners will do the same. I'm really enjoying the things that you are sharing. And earlier you mentioned the importance of protecting this connection in your marriage, the friendship and the connection
Yes.
that you have. I'm wondering if there were times when you experienced disconnection. Sometimes the connection actually dropped off or was wonky. Could you share how you worked through such times to build that connection back up?
For sure, we have had many times of disconnection and conflict and tensions, a very tangible manner, but in like a very atmospheric sense of like, not being able to meet each other's gaze. Maybe I'd rather use my phone and be more connected in another sense. I think for Douglas, he experienced it in a different manner.
Yes. I think for us, disconnections are really painful times. It's a time where you can feel that even in my own body, I feel that my heart will be beating faster. I find it harder to sleep. So it's all these very physical signs of stress. For me, I struggle a lot with shame, unhealthy shame, especially during times of disconnection with my wife. Really, the key that I had to learn, which was also a skill that I needed time to learn, was this term called emotional regulation. For me, that looks like really taking deep and conscious breaths, especially for my exhale. I needed to learn how to exhale in a very intentional manner. And I think it's just a very small but important skills that helps me to really regulate my emotions. In the past, I would used to also like go for runs, but I think in this season, that doesn't really help. Sometimes I go for a run and I come back angrier because of all the adrenaline that's inside of me. Yeah, maybe my wife can share some of the tips she uses when she's disconnected.
I think Douglas was talking about regulation, but I think our key principle is definitely to talk as soon as we can. But sometimes as individuals, we just need the time to let steam off and to process a bit more of why we felt the way we felt, what did we feel, and to just kind of think through that a bit. For myself, how regulation looks like is taking a short nap or just lying down on my bed and listening to some soft music or taking a shower. I think when we can, do get back together as soon as we can, ideally before the day ends, just to connect. And then of course to use like the emotion wheel that we mentioned previously, using I statements, which I think we've all learned before, right? Like, I feel hurt because of this, because I perceive that you were da-da-da-da-da.
I feel that when you are able to show up to the conversation regulated, it's a lot more helpful. There were times that I forced a conversation before I was regulated, and that actually became more destructive.
Right.
I said things that I regretted because I spoke through bitterness and resentment. The key point I wanted listeners to also bring away, it's a healthy marriage is not so much the avoidance of having disconnection, but I think it's rather the skill that you need to learn to do repairs well. We are at the stage of our marriage 6 months in where we realize that you can't avoid disconnection. Thankfully for us, it's rare and far between. But we have also been honing this muscle of learning to do repairs faster. For me as well, one key I can give to the listeners is, I think as a man, when I choose to enter that place of vulnerability first, and I say that, hey, I am sorry for, and I own my part of the mistake, that really helps me to bridge the disconnection faster with my wife. Yeah, and I'm thankful that for Andrea, she's also really quick to extend forgiveness to me. Yeah, there's something powerful when, as the man, you take the initiative to say that I'm sorry. Yeah, and I think that really softens my wife's heart, and that helps us to bridge that disconnection gap really quickly.
and the power of like knowing your partner and what they need in such times. So I think for Douglas and I, what I've found is that in a lot of our disconnection, he experiences shame, like what he shared earlier. A lot of the times what I can do is to really just, put my hand on him and give him like some touch in a physical way to be like, I'm here. Sometimes the non-verbal speak so much louder than just like the verbal part. Yeah, so that's something that I learned to fight well in our marriage, is knowing the other and what they need. For Douglas, it's a touch, it's a hug, to assure him that, hey, we are good, we are fine, I'm here.
It's conflicting evidence, right, to my shame, because when I'm feeling shame, I'm thinking I'm not worthy, I shouldn't deserve a hug or a touch, and I just deserve to be punished. But that's even how we see that when we are able to experience compassion and grace from our spouse, that breaks the power of the shame, at least for myself, the grip that it has on me.
I think we have like ventured into a very deep space where we have brought up very deep issues like shame, as you mentioned, other things like maybe fear of rejection in the moment. And I'm also hearing a lot of a special language that you are almost talking about. It is the language of being able to describe how I feel and to own that feeling, to identify it, to verbalize it, and perhaps in so doing, actually minimizing some of the power that it has on you. And also the non-verbals, right? Where even a touch can communicate so much. I feel like we are learning some of the helpful handles that you guys have been practicing, even though you've been married for a short period of time. But I think you have been so intentional in building all these, I would say, assets, protective assets on your marriage, and really building your friendship on a strong foundation. Yeah. Building on what you have been doing, even in the past, right? Even before you were married. Yeah. So that's really wonderful to hear. I can also imagine a listener going like, wow, this sounds like a new language I need to attend school to learn from scratch. So I'm just wondering if we are in that position, if we are in that place where, how do I even begin to say something like this? Like, I feel ... Where can we start? How do we start to change the way we have been speaking, the way we have been maybe interacting with our spouse? Perhaps it's finding difficulty in being able to say, I feel something. Or perhaps it's so used to like, hey, go and pick the kids, it's time. Or, hey, your day to do laundry. Or, hey, you haven't brought the garbage out.
Yes. Wow.
How do we break that pattern if it has been sort of been practiced for a while?
Actually, to be very honest, Douglas and I never always started like that. In fact, at the start of our relationship, before we were even married, it was difficult for me to really share what was going inside. There was always this analogy, even when we were going through premarital, of a rhino and a hedgehog. I would relate to the hedgehog because I would be the one that withdraws during conflict, whereas Douglas is a lot more confrontational. But I think that it takes so much courage and even like affirmation and encouragement of your partner to sit through it, to encourage you, give you that space to share. So I think it definitely takes time. It definitely takes courage. But I would say that what really helped was Douglas' encouragement, his gentleness to help me, like even bringing me that feelings wheel, right? Because I didn't know how to start. Yeah, so even just that wheel itself, even if you can't use the words, just maybe point to like the face, right? And I think even as a primary school teacher, that's what I do with my kids in school, right? If they don't know the word, then what would be helpful is to, just point at the facial expression. And I think that gives easy access even to your partner to understand, hey, like it's beyond that issue that is happening within us, but going deeper into that hurt or that pain or that shame somewhere deep down there. And I think that itself, identifying feelings, really helps like your partner giving you empathy and compassion for how you are feeling.
I got to be honest with you, June. I don't really know how to answer your question. The first thought that came to my head is have coffee with Douglas and Andrea. I think I want to acknowledge the reality of many marriages, which when a pattern is set into a habit and it's been so business as usual, right? It's difficult, right, to take that even one step of change. And as humans, it's uncomfortable to even take that step of courage. Yeah, especially for a man to say sorry, right? For me, that was difficult when I first chose to do that. I believe that a lot of us, we have good intentions, but the one thing that we don't have is we lack the skills,
Yeah.
right? So I think one very practical way to change a habit that has been so set in stone for such a long time is really to receive compassion from someone else. Maybe at this stage of your marriage, it may not be your spouse. Maybe that's being too idealistic to say that your spouse will be the one to show compassion to you. But it's really to have one person outside of a marriage to really extend and model that for you.
Well said, Douglas. Indeed, I can see how being intentional with practicing compassion, extending that empathy and kindness has really built your marriage. And thanks for acknowledging too that it wasn't an easy journey. It didn't come like naturally for you guys as well, right? Yeah, but you continued to work at it, and I'm so happy to hear that all these efforts have borne fruit. And like I said earlier, I'm definitely getting my hands on that emotions wheel, not just for myself, but also for my kids. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that really helpful tips. Now, in each podcast, we actually address a frequently asked question that couples have about marriage. And today's question comes from a husband. And he says, friendship with my spouse has always been a priority, even from our pre-marriage days. But as we grow and change over time, our friendship has evolved too. So how can we nurture our friendship through the different seasons of life, no matter how much we change?
The simple answer is to keep staying curious about each other. The human soul and the human psyche, it's limitless, and we change as we go through the different decades of our life. For us, we are still in our 20s, haven't lived much of life, so I think coming from us, not very credible of a source. But I like to think that we have an old soul. I think one thing that we prioritize as a couple, the perspective of curiosity really helps us to see that this person is so different from me, but it prevents you from attacking the differences, but rather it gives you that lens of appreciation. Because I think as humans, the very natural tendency is to attack what we don't understand, right? And in a marriage, that's a real danger because there's no one on planet Earth that is identical to you, right? Even no matter how much of a good match you are in terms of your personality or your personality type, it's impossible for you to find someone that you can perfectly understand. So having that heart of curiosity really has helped us in the past 3 years of our friendship.
Yeah, so the funny thing is, even though we've known each other for 3 years, but something I only found out about him after marriage, which is in terms of our traveling style, which we only went on our honeymoon and first trip together after marriage, was that we had completely different traveling styles to like our family of origin. So I would come from a family and I would totally be like, let's go and see like the most well-rated, like most visited, like on all like the books and trip advisor and all that. And that would be like my goal of any travel. Yeah, but for Douglas, he would be like, oh, like the best holiday is the time that we get to spend and to connect together.
Yes.
Yeah, and mind you, we went to Switzerland, right? So that's kind of like the holiday trip that's up there. I mean, even during our honeymoon, we had conflicts and conversations about this. And growing through that new season of friendship in terms of discovering about a different side of each other. And I think we both had to stay curious instead of being like, hey, why don't you want to like see my stuff? Like, I thought we came all the way here and we chose this place to see this. And I think for me, it was learning that, wow, there is also so much beauty in just slowing down and going to a cafe and having coffee together. Yeah, and that actually felt a lot more restful than just seeing everything we wanted, which was exciting and nice, but would also leave us physically tired from the day. What Douglas shared about having a curious and open mind about the other, that has also helped me to be a bit more balanced in like how I travel or even how I see things.
Yes. To which I will reply, the best destination is your spouse. The 5-star Google
Quotable
review.
quote by Douglas.
Yeah, I think to just sum up what we have learned about the importance of friendship, it's that as you get to know someone without being too fast to pass judgment as, wow, why are you so different? Why do you do things like that? You really get the best of both worlds, right? Because in this world, there's always mountain people and sea people. There are people that eat with their mouth open and eat with their mouth closed. But in the two sides of the spectrum, there's always something to appreciate on both sides. And I think that's the beauty of marrying someone so different from you, is that you get to see another side of how to relate to the world that is different from you, but it's equally beautiful. So yes, I think that's what I want to leave us with.
Well said. It's amazing how differences attract, right?
Yes.
Before marriage. But then after marriage, the same differences tend to annoy and irritate you. So thanks for sharing about how, staying curious and being open to each other's influence, right? And being able to see that, hey, there is beauty in this too, right? That really helps us to grow as individuals and also as a couple. So thanks for sharing that wonderful tip. Indeed, friendship in marriage is truly about learning how to grow together and to meet the different demands of each season. By staying curious and being open to each other, you can really keep that friendship and connection strong. So thanks so much, Douglas and Andrea, for sharing so many tips and so many practical handles, and yet allowing us to really have a glimpse into your lives, for sharing so openly and vulnerably. I personally have enjoyed this session. I'm sure many listeners out there as well. So I'm not going to let you go easily. Would you care to share your parting words of advice to our listeners before we let you go?
My parting words to the listeners would be to go to connectioncodes.com. We'll link it in the show notes as well. You can download their feelings wheel for free. Yeah, it's just their freebie that they give out. This resource really gives you the language to communicate your emotions.
I think mine would be to see the beginning from the end in mind, to stick with the vision of marriage, to love each other well, to be open, curious, gentle, flexible to each other. These are things that we are continuously learning as well. So thanks for having this even opportunity to remind ourselves what is good.
That's wonderful. Keep it up, guys. And we hope to hear more from you all, you both, as we continue growing, right, in this marriage journey. So in each podcast, we end off with a couple challenge for couples to do and share with each other. If you are listening to this with your spouse, here is your challenge. Put into practice one of two of the practical tips that our guest couple has shared today to nurture your friendship with your spouse. Do it for 1 month and see what happens. If you are married for 5 years or less, Just Married is the workshop for you. This newly launched program aims to equip couples with practical tips to strengthen your unique bond as you navigate the foundational phases of married life. Because a great marriage doesn't just happen, it's built together. Find out more. Go to www.family.org.sg/C2JustMarried. We really hope you've enjoyed today's episode and found it helpful. As always, do share it with a friend who might benefit from it as well. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to stay tuned to the next episode.